Welcome everyone to this meeting of the Town Forum. The time is just after 6 o'clock. As usual, this meeting is being held under the regulations which came into effect on the 4th of April 2020 in response to the COVID-19 situation. My name is Councillor Kathleen Becker and I'm the chairperson of this forum. There are a few housekeeping reminders to run through as there are new working practices in response to the regulations. First, and I'm sure everyone knows this, but please keep your microphones muted and ensure your camera is off whilst you're not addressing the meeting, as this reduces background noise and avoids any unintentional disturbances. The meeting is also being audio recorded and live streamed from the Council's website, and a video recording will be uploaded to the Council's YouTube channel after the meeting. Members and officers, where appropriate for each item, please use the chat function of the meeting to indicate that you wish to speak or to raise a point of order or an explanation. I'll then invite you to speak at the appropriate time. Each member will be invited to speak in turn, so therefore I encourage all members to keep your contributions as clear and concise as possible. When speaking and referring to the agenda papers, please make sure you reference the page or paragraph number. Please also note that the duration of this virtual meeting is planned for 2 hours. If members wish to leave the meeting at any point, please make that known to me through the chat function so I can announce to the meeting that you are about to leave. Can I please ask the Democratic Services Officer to undertake a roll call of this meeting?
Thank you, Chair. Members, if you wouldn't mind unmuting your microphones, and I'll do a very quick roll call in alphabetical order. Councillor Becker, I can see is present. Councillor Krask.
Present.
Councillor Ferguson.
Yes, present.
Sorry, thank you. Councillor Groom.
Present. Good evening.
Councillor Hiscock.
Present. I'm here.
Councillor Hutchison.
Present.
Councillor Lerney.
Present.
Councillor Mather.
Present.
Councillor Murphy.
Good evening, I'm present.
Thank you. Councillor Scott.
Present, thanks.
Councillor Thompson.
Present.
Councillor Todd.
Present.
And Councillor Weir.
Present.
Thank you, members. Chair, that's all members of the forum present. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just confirm, Councillor Ferguson, I think you're showing up as the under 14 Falcons, is that correct? Just so we know that it's you.
No, that's myself, Alan Higgs from Winchester City Flyers.
No, Councillor Becker, that's not me.
No, sorry, that popped up. Your face didn't pop up when you mentioned that you were here, so thank you. Starting off with tonight's agenda items, as everyone is here, we have no apologies. Can I just ask, as normal, for disclosure of interests? Councillor Hiscock.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I had to disclose a non-pecuniary interest that I'm a county councillor, and some of the items on the agenda tonight may relate to my duties in that role.
Thank you.
Yes, this is Councillor Todd. I have the same declaration. I'm a county councillor and have a personal but non-pecuniary interest.
Please. Thank you. Any other disclosures of interest tonight? Oh, Matthew, did you?
Sorry, Chair. Sorry.
That's all right. No, thank you. Thank you all. Moving on to the next item, the minutes of the meeting of the 24th of November. These are on pages 5 to 8 of the main agenda pack. Can we agree those minutes as a true record?
Agreed.
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 Thank you. Moving on to Chairperson's announcements. I only have one announcement. It's more a point of clarification. There was a statement made during the council meeting that may have intimated that the town forum is an unelected body, and I just wish to confirm for everybody listening that we are indeed an elected body. We are all elected councillors. I just wanted to make that clear. Moving on to public participation, we have 2 members of the public registered to speak. Are you both here? We have Mr. Higgs and Mr. Caldwell.
Yes, I'm here.
Yes,
Alan Higgs.
I'm here too.
Thank you. I just wanted to check, do you want to make your statements now, or did you want to wait until before the agenda item? It's up to you.
As and when it fits in.
Okay.
Chair, I'll wait till agenda item 8 if that's okay. This is Mike Caldwell.
No, that's absolutely fine. Thank you both. So the next item is a presentation that we're receiving. I think Mr. Fox is going to be giving this presentation on the local plan consultation and strategic issues and options. Mr. Fox, are you?
Yeah. Good evening, Chair. Good evening, members. Thank you very much for inviting me to attend your meeting. We're reaching a very exciting stage, and I am excited about it, in the local plan progress. Cabinet agreed the strategic issues and priorities document on the 20th of January. We are now working up the consultation strategy, and I'm going to talk you through the actual document itself, the new website, and what we intend to do. But I would really like your support in terms of hoping to spread the message and encourage as many people as possible to get involved in this exciting consultation. Thank you, Matthew. Next slide, please. So to coincide with the launch of the local plan, we are developing a new local plan website. And the key word is your place, your plan. And the new website will go live from the 15th of February. We put on the slide there the actual www.name, localplan.winchester.gov.uk. We thought it was very important to make sure it was a .gov.uk to make sure people knew that it was a Winchester City Council website. Next slide, please. So what's the new website going to do? Well, the main thing is we want to make a website that's very easy to navigate through, because we do appreciate that the local plan is a complex kind of tool in terms of what's included in it. So what we want to do is make that kind of as easy as possible to understand and to click on the areas that you want to be kind of informed about. We've divided the document up into 9 key areas of focus, and you'll see at the top there's going to be kind of little icons that you can press on. So if you are interested in a specific topic, so for example carbon neutrality, you can click on that and it will take you to the specific kind of chapter on the carbon neutrality, because we appreciate that time is obviously precious, particularly in these current situations, and some people may only be interested in looking at one specific or a couple of issues, but we do hope obviously people will read the document as a whole, because that is really important. A link to that, obviously the council obviously declared a climate emergency, and that is our overarching kind of objective and theme that's integrated throughout the whole local plan. Whilst we've got a separate kind of topic on carbon neutrality, it is obviously at the heart of the new local plan. We're trying to kind of explain the different processes in a more kind of plain English way, because unfortunately us planners, we talk about Reg 18, Reg 19 plans. So we are trying to basically understand, kind of talk in plain English to people about the different stages in the local plan production. And more importantly, what is a local plan and why is it important to you? Next slide, please. A key feature of the new website will be a mapping feature, and that is going to develop and evolve through the local plan process. You will recall with the white paper, it was very much focused on a GIS kind of plan where people could click on their postcode and have a look to see what's happening around them. So, for example, they might be interested to see if there was a site being promoted by a land promoter near them, or they might be interested if there was a conservation area or listed buildings. So the key thing is that it will be an interactive map, but that will grow and that will develop over the period of the local plan. So like I say, we're starting kind of gently with a few layers and then we're kind of building up from there. Next slide, please. So the local plan process, I describe it as a journey, and it's a journey that we want everybody to participate in. So it starts with the strategic issues and priorities consultation, which is going to start on the 15th of February and run until the 12th of April. So it's for 8 weeks. After we consult on that, and I'll come on to the online events about how we can involve people, we need to consider the representations or comments that have been made, and we need to prepare another plan. And unfortunately, that's where it's kind of gets a bit jargonish because it's called the Reg 18 plan. We then need to review the plan, the comments that have been received, and obviously kind of adapt those. And we need to then publish another plan, which is in the middle there, consider responses and publish the Regulation 19 plan. We then submit the plan, which is the plan that we just consulted on, to the Secretary of State, who will appoint an independent inspector to oversee an examination. And the inspector will kind of set the agenda and invitations to appear at that examination. Other people will kind of attend the examination, but in terms of who the inspector wants to hear from, that's their decision. And then we move towards adoption. At the moment, we are heading for a plan to be adopted by the end of 2023. We need to revise our timetable because obviously there was a slight delay with obviously the government's housing numbers, but that will be going back to cabinet, hence why I haven't put any specific dates on this slide at the moment. But like I say, we're very clear that we want to get a plan in place by the end of 2023. Next slide, please. So what will the actual document include? So during the consultation period, which like I say is from the 15th of February to the 12th of April, we know that there's an existing vision in the adopted core strategy, but obviously since that time, obviously a number of things have happened. So for example, obviously climate change emergency, COVID, changing shopping habits and things like that. So what we're asking people for is their views on what the vision should be. And the way I describe the vision is, what would we like the actual district to look like in 2038? And that's quite a difficult concept to get your head around in terms of obviously that far in advance. We would look and we are seeking comments on elements of the town council's vision for Winchester, but obviously appreciating that only covers obviously the Winchester area. And in terms of the objectives, the overarching objective is carbon neutrality, but there clearly are some other sustainability, environmental and social infrastructure objectives. And again, we're seeking feedback on those to make sure that we've got those right. Next slide, please. So the 9 key issues or topics are the carbon neutrality, biodiversity and natural environment, conserving and enhancing the historic environment, homes for all, vibrant ecology, promoting sustainable transport, living well, which is a new topic, low carbon infrastructure, and ensuring obviously the delivery and success of the local plan. So I'm going to quickly kind of go through each of those topics now, just to kind of give you a flavour of what they include. Next slide, please. So as I said, carbon neutrality is the overarching objective and is the heart of the local plan, but we felt that it needed a specific topic given its importance in the actual strategic issues and priorities document. Now, the local plan is one of the tools that can help support carbon emissions in the district, and it's important to make that point that it's a very important tool, but it is only one of the tools. We are proposing that we could have a strategic policy, an overarching kind of policy on climate change, and a number of local policies which would assist us to moving towards carbon neutrality. Again, we're seeking feedback on what those types of issues are, and in the actual document we put forward some suggestions and some ideas, and we'd really want to move that agenda forward. Next slide, please. Biodiversity and natural environment. Clearly, as a result of COVID, the natural environment is becoming increasingly important to all of us. And you would have heard that obviously the government is very keen on biodiversity net gain. There's new legislation coming in. And obviously we are looking at whether offsetting or financial contributions should be allowed. In terms of obviously how we deal with open space and providing obviously opportunities to link open space together in a connected network. And obviously a key question that has cropped up is about the approaches to countryside protection. We are seeking views on whether or not the existing policies are strong enough or whether or not there's a case for a green belt. And like I say, there's a lot of information in the document about the kind of approach towards green belt and whether or not the policies work. But obviously the bar for green belt is pretty high, so we have made that very clear in the document itself. Next slide, please. Conserving and enhancing the historic environment. Clearly, we have a wealth of historic assets in the district itself. That's designated and non-designated assets. And what we're seeking views for, whether the existing heritage policies are adequate or whether or not they need amending or supplementing. And importantly, linking back to carbon neutrality, is how can the local plan support energy efficiency measures in listed buildings, whilst also preventing harm to heritage features. Next slide, please. Homes for All. Clearly, Homes for All is a very important chapter in the local plan, and one that is extremely important to a lot of local people in terms of obviously getting the step on the housing ladder. But we mustn't overshadow the other important topics in the document. We are required to put forward alternative ways of or options of meeting the growth that we are required, which is just under 700 dwellings per year. So we put forward in the document, and we're seeking views on those, to 4 different approaches which are outlined on the screen. Now, it might end up as a kind of blend of a couple of options, or 1 option or 2 options. But we are seeking that in an open, transparent way about the future of the district in terms of how we should grow and develop to 2038. Next slide, please. The vibrant economy. Clearly, as a result of COVID, footfall has obviously declined, and obviously shops are really struggling in terms of obviously our town centres and city centre. So we are seeking views on how we should obviously move forward in terms of obviously changes with permitted development rights, and more importantly, obviously how and what type of uses are appropriate in the town centre and how we can increase footfall in the town centres. Clearly linked to that is the rural employment opportunities, and obviously people are working from home and how we can support that, and how we can support the development of the green economy and carbon neutrality. So that's a very important subject, which is obviously changing pretty much on a daily basis in terms of obviously how can we support a vibrant economy in the district. Next slide, please. Promoting sustainable transport. We're asking whether or not the existing policies are kind of working at the moment. Where we should concentrate development, where we have, for example, cycling and walking and public transport opportunities, and whether or not park and ride facilities are needed. And that's one discussion that's obviously happening in the north of the city at the moment. But clearly, obviously, how we move around, there's obviously growth in kind of electric bikes, e-bikes, e-scooters, and how does the local plan adapt to that and embrace that kind of change that's on the horizon about how we actually move around, which clearly is going to change dramatically over the plan period. Next slide, please. Living well. We're particularly excited about this topic because the access to the open spaces is clearly very important in terms of people's health and well-being and health and inequality, and linking together and supporting communities, which is really important. And one of the key messages that came out of the Vision for Winchester work was the 15-minute neighbourhood concept. So we've embraced that, and we put that forward in the document, and we were seeking views on that and how that might develop. Clearly, it's not a one-stop all for all settlements within the district, because obviously clearly some of the rural areas it's just not possible, but there are other opportunities that we can do, particularly with the green infrastructure and linking together neighbourhoods and settlements, which is obviously key to that, and supporting obviously local facilities. Next slide, please. Low carbon infrastructure and local plan viability. Clearly, as we move forward to the local plan over the period to 2038, technology is going to change, and how can we support best renewable energy and low carbon infrastructure is going to be a key part of that. Linked to that, battery storage is becoming a very topical topic in itself, and obviously how can we embrace that? And also, one of the key things that we are doing is a call for renewable energy sites, and we are doing that alongside a number of other call for sites, which I'll come on to in a minute. But we do feel that in order for us to move forward with the climate emergency, it's very important to do a call for renewable energy sites. Next slide, please. A key part of developing a local plan is how do we measure whether or not we're on track or whether or not it is successful. So we have put forward some ideas about how we currently monitor the plan, which is through the authority monitoring report. But how do we make sure, what kind of monitoring indicators do we track to make sure that we're moving towards the District 2030 carbon neutral target? So obviously, like I say, this is a critical part of developing a local plan. What kind of checks and measures do you have in place to make sure you are achieving what you set out to achieve? And obviously that's linked back to the vision. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, we will be in parallel with the consultation, do a call for sites. It's very important that obviously we do a call for sites, and that includes kind of small sites, self-build sites, but also gypsies and travel sites, self-build and custom build sites, brownfield sites. We're particularly keen to use brownfield sites, and we're particularly keen to hear from people if they know of any brownfield sites that we should be having a look at and investigating further. Linked to that, employment sites. We are very keen to hear about any employment sites, as I've mentioned, renewable energy sites, biodiversity offsetting sites, carbon offsetting sites, and nitrogen offsetting works and green infrastructure sites. So it's a very broad call for sites that we're saying, please let us know if you've got any sites that you think are suitable for this. And clearly some sites might have a multifunctional kind of purpose where they might come forward for a different range and a number of combination of different uses on the site. But like I say, we are doing a specific call for site for those sites there. Next slide, please. So how can people respond to the strategic issues and priorities consultation? Well, the new website will go live from Monday the 15th of February. And we will be holding various virtual online sessions throughout the consultation period at different times of the day, including weekends, where we're going to ask people to register on Eventbrite, similar to what they did with CWR. If people are unable to access the internet, we will be able to provide paper copies on request if people are unable to view documents online, and that's very important in terms of obviously making sure that we are doing an inclusive consultation. Next slide, please. Again, linking back to the website, we want to make it as easy as possible for people to have your say on the website itself. It will be linked back to the council citizen space where the consultation questionnaire will be hosted. But we appreciate again that not everybody wants to answer every question on every topic. So you will be able to kind of dip in and respond to specific topics if you like, or obviously we would encourage you to respond to all of the document. On the new website, there will be short polls. We think that's quite important because people may only want to respond to a specific issue or a specific kind of topic. So we think that's very important to leave that ability for people to actually go in and do a short poll if they so desire. Next slide, please. So in terms of the actual engagement strategy, my team's been working very hard on this. We will be doing social media, so that's the usual kind of things, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and things like that. We will be advertising on Wave Radio because we appreciate that some people are obviously listening to the radio at home, and obviously we think that's an important way to get the message out. There will be a range of posters around the district. I think we've got a list of about 250 posters that we will be producing, and we are asking parish councils to help us out with that. We will be providing them with posters. We will be doing newspaper advertisements, and we will be doing bus stop advertising. Bus stop advertising we think is quite a useful way because people are walking past bus stops and they will see the signs. There will be invitations to a range of virtual events, as I mentioned, and that will be hosted on Eventbrite. and we will be obviously publishing it on the council website, Parish Connect and other council platforms, and trying to get the message out. But the key thing is we really need your help to raise the awareness about this consultation, and I'm really open to ideas about how we can reach a broad section of people, and particularly the hard to reach people. So if you've got any ideas, I'll be really keen to hear them, because now's the time to tell me, have you thought about this? And we can take that on board. We will also be advertising that on posters at the hospitals and GP premises. We've managed to secure that. We're also looking at the university radio and various other ways to reach young people. So hopefully it's as inclusive as possible. Next slide, please. Thank you very much, and I'm very happy to answer questions, and particularly very keen to hear your ideas about how we can reach the widest possible audience and make sure that everybody hears about the local plan. The key message is it's your place, your plan. Please get involved. It's a journey that we want you on. Thank you.
Thank you. That was brilliant. One quick question from me. Well, what is the deadline for responding to the consultation?
The deadline for response is the 12th of April. It's going for 8 weeks. It will go into PERDA, but we've got permission to do that. So like I say, we would encourage everybody to respond. Thank you.
Thank you. I can see lots of people have questions. Councillor Green, you're first up.
Right, can I just say thank you for a start to Adrian? That was very interesting presentation. I actually managed to understand all that. One question I have got though is I thought, so I might be wrong, but I thought that e-scooters were illegal.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I just raised it as an example of the way that things are changing and probably will change over the plan period, because clearly they're doing trials at the moment. I can't kind of crystal ball, but I was using it as an example of the way that technology is changing and will continue to change over the plan period. I'm not necessarily saying we'll have a policy in the local plan on it, but it's an example of where technology is changing. And obviously that's a key issue that obviously, is one example of how things will change over the plan period. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. I think Mr. Finch, you put your hand up at that. Did you have something to add?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, Councillor Green, yes, I believe there's a trial that's being considered by the County Council, but as Adrian says, what we're trying to do is kind of future-proof the plan as well, so as he's explained, but I think there are moves afoot maybe to change the status of that, but it's just worth saying that we're looking ahead as well, but understood that Councillor Green, I think at the moment he's quite right. Thanks.
Thanks. Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Adrian, for a brilliant presentation. Reading through it this afternoon, it was actually really good, and just to have your words with the presentation was also excellent. On the call for sites, obviously there's probably 3 sites which sort of sometimes will come up for concerns with Winchester residents. One at the moment is always hitting the press at the moment, the Royal Down site, which is concerned with about 5,000 houses, the future of John Moore Barracks, and the future of also Bushville site. Now, I noticed in one of your presentation points under biodiversity, when you sort of explained about open space and green belt, sometimes residents have sort of tried village green statements to try and protect certain areas and so forth like that. What's the conflict in trying to sort of call for sites to try and put them into the local plan to keep up with what the government inspector would sort of see is a way forward for this local plan to be achieved, but from a national point of view, but also try to protect the green belt stroke open space for Winchester? I know it's a sort of a conflict issue sometimes that has to get a balancing act, but how do you foresee that coming through? And another sort of point about your consultation for the next 8 weeks, obviously it's down to members to try and support officers. We're trying to get this out to as many people as we can. Are you foreseeing those who don't have the website some sort of form of a sort of letter drop to shelter schemes and so forth like that, maybe through the tenancy team, to try and get a bit more engagement with people who just haven't got social media savviness or website connection. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. I should make it very clear that the actual consultation that we're doing at this stage of the process is not talking about specific sites. So obviously I know there's been a lot of press about Royal Down, etc. But obviously at this stage of the process, we're very much a high level in terms of the options, and we want feedback on that in terms of the growth options. So we're not talking about specific sites. Clearly with Sir John Moore Barracks, it is a brownfield, majority of the site is a brownfield site, and there are ongoing discussions with my colleagues in development management about that site. Bushfields, like I say, is an allocation at the moment in the existing local plan, and any allocation in the existing local plan at the next stage of the process, we will need to review those allocations to see if they are still deliverable. If they're not deliverable, they will not be going forward into the next version of the local plan, and made that very clear to the owners of kind of Bushfields that they need to basically convince us that it is still deliverable, because the way I describe it is we want to deal with apples and apples. I can't have a site that's coming forward, being put forward in the call for sites, and if I have to prove that that's deliverable, an existing allocation also has to prove that it is still deliverable to be rolled forward to the local plan. In terms of obviously the hard to reach people, we are looking at the care homes in terms of obviously whether or not we can get posters out there to the care homes about the actual consultation. But clearly, if there's somebody that I need to speak to, because forgive me, I am new to the council, that you think would be a good person for me to speak to about getting the message out there, please let me know, and obviously we can contact them, because one thing I didn't mention is we're also putting posters in the car parks, because our car parking attendants are still going out there. So we're trying to utilise our staff effectively in terms of if there are people going out to various places, that we utilise them to the full potential. But yeah, if there are people that you think I should talk to about that, please let me know, and the sooner the better, please. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks. Councillor Weir, you're next.
Thank you, Chair, for that, and thank you, Adrian, for an excellent presentation. I think it's really got us off the blocks. I wanted to just look at this slide on Homes for All, the 4 options that are in on there, and particularly what the implications might look like for residents of Winchester. They're looking at these 4 options and thinking, well, which one should I go for? We'll be looking later on at the vision for Winchester, which has indicated that people want a 15-minute city, which suggests that living closer in and developing closer in is an important one, which tends to lead you in the direction of focusing on Winchester itself and other larger, more sustainable settlements. So I want to understand, or sort of tease out for residents, what the implications of that might be. A lot of pressure on us to broaden out our understanding of brownfield sites and focus on brownfield sites. So combining that, and you're asking for small sites. So I think what I'm saying is that certainly for residents of Winchester, we want to understand the implications of these terms. We, in the current plan in Winchester, rely very heavily, apart from the major development outside at Barton Farm, on windfall sites. And quite frankly, it's been chaotic. Residents have very little say in that, which sites come forward or how they're developed. They just left, quite frankly, at the end of the day, to fight it out at planning committee. What reassurance can we offer to Winchester residents that if they go and they consent to some sort of further densification of the area inside the urban boundary of Winchester, that they really will have a say in how that's developed and the impact that it has on their communities? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I would like to start by saying there's no preconception about, at the moment, which option kind of is the best, hence why we're consulting on that. and we want to be very open and transparent about those open options that they are on the table. We haven't made up any decision on any of the Sheila sites that have come forward, and we are seeking views on that. I do appreciate that obviously people will look at the options and go, well, what does that actually mean? Does that actually mean if I support that option, that would happen? But like I say, we've been very clear that we're not looking at sites. We're trying to look at the strategy, which is sometimes difficult to kind of understand. But I do think it's a building block that we need to get right in terms of obviously how we move forward. And in terms of obviously brownfield sites and small sites, yes, they are exceptionally important. But we are constrained in terms of obviously what a brownfield site is by the definition in the NPPF. But obviously in terms of what sites come forward, we assess those anyway, whether or not they're brownfield, greenfield. So we will look at those sites. But we are particularly interested in trying to get people to think about what brownfield sites there are, if there are any redundant kind of factory buildings or things like that in the actual kind of urban area, which are kind of brownfield themselves. But we are very keen to work with local people to help us out and identify those sites. In terms of windfill sites, clearly the importance of actually getting a plan in place is our #1 priority, so that we can obviously have a strategy in place that shows exactly what we want to achieve as a city council in terms of obviously which sites we want to develop. Clearly there will be windfill sites come forward during the plan period, but obviously what we want to do is identify the future strategy and the growth that we want for the actual district. And that's why it's important to get the plan in place and to engage with as many people as possible. But like I say, we are very keen to meet obviously and talk to people about sites and to find out which are the best sites, and obviously if there are any sites that we're unaware of, for people to let us know. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kresk, I think you were next, followed very swiftly by Councillor Mather. Can I just ask that you put whether or not you have a question in the chat? It's much easier for me to keep track of who's first if you do that rather than putting up your hand. So Councillor Kresk first, please.
Very good. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Adrian, for a usually fantastic presentation. Couple of questions around the vision for Winchester, which we're going to talk about later on, but also around your request for suggestions around engaging with the public for one. I'm certainly pleased to see vision for Winchester mentioned. You know, that was an exercise very similar to this, arguably, in terms of going out and engaging with people who we don't normally speak with and hear from. Obviously a different scope to some degree, but very much overlapping. I just want to make sure or offer us a suggestion in that community that was gathered as part of that vision for Winchester, if they could be re-engaged, letting them know that this activity is happening, because you've got a body of people there that have been engaged in this thinking for some time, and they have an existing network of connections that are already thinking about this. So I wouldn't want them to hear that from you or from us, rather than hear that from a poster or not hear about it at all. So that's one suggestion. And I do like, actually, we might come into this later as well, some of the suggestions that came through in the detail of the vision around a home audit, for example, in terms of, you know, the group recognised the need for more housing in Winchester and a desire for more housing to sit comfortably within the existing footprint. One of their findings was that planners need to plan, and suggested an audit could be undertaken by local architects and planners who know the city. So as I read that and think and hear what you're saying, it's a question around how much do we put on the responsibility for people to offer up sites, and how much is within our remit to actually look for those sites ourselves and think about what it is that we would like to create, and how we can organise that, rather than simply leaving it to the only to call for sites. So interesting in terms of how we can kind of be more strategic rather than just necessarily leaving it to what people provide us with. And I think some of that, as I say, in terms of planners need to plan, and this home audit idea which they came out with in terms of us looking at the city and looking at areas where we might want to put housing. And I think the change in the high street is possibly a good thing for us to look at in terms of what is the future of the high street, and should we be putting more homes into the high street, which probably ties into the city being a site of regeneration in terms of the new language of planning. So that's probably enough for me for now. There's a question in there, I'm sure, somewhere.
Don't doubt it, Mike. Mr. Fox, did you want to respond?
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yes. Yeah, we are very keen to build on the back of obviously CWR and obviously the One Great Win. We have been in contact with Balls and Summer about obviously how we can facilitate that. Clearly, we are a bit constrained by, unfortunately, GDPR, but I think there is a message that we need to get across on their website, and obviously ask them to communicate to the people that have successfully engaged through the One Great Win process to spread the message, because I am very keen to build on the back of successful consultations that have happened, not reinvent the wheel. We've got clearly a very good resource there, and we need to make the most of it, and we just got to try and find a way to do that in a way that I don't come fall foul of GDPR. So yes, that's very much on our agenda. Very pleased to hear that planning should plan. I love planning and placemaking, and placemaking is the key thing that I want to get across. And I do want people to be proactive about coming forward, because if it's a developer-led plan, we don't get that. We get sites that come forward, and everybody on this call probably knows Winchester a lot better than I do in terms of obviously which areas are in need of regeneration or which areas have the most potential. And I would really welcome obviously that kind of local involvement to come forward with sites or suggestions and say, have you looked at this area? This area might have potential for housing. And I'd really be keen to work with members of the Town Forum to do that, because clearly I've got a small team. And obviously Winchester is a large city in terms of obviously going around and obviously looking for sites, and clearly if there are sites which are in close proximity to the city centre, I am keen to make the most of those. So yes, very keen to work with you in a proactive way, and clearly link back to the high street, changing nature of that. How can we increase the footfall in the actual city centre, which is obviously critical to that. And obviously linked back to that is obviously the student population and how we deal with that, which is a key question in the strategic issues and priorities document. So yes, very keen to work with you. So open for suggestions how we can move that idea forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Mr. Finch, did you want to jump in there?
Yeah, just very quickly, just picking up on Councillor Crass' point, actually, we're slightly frustrated in terms we are bound by GDPR, because the points that Ms. Crass just made there is exactly what we were saying to Boyle and Summers, and technically it's very difficult. So if you know those groups and they are happy that you supply us with their details, if that's okay with them, please do, even if you think we might already have them, because we really like to do that, but we're slightly frustrated by the way the regs work there. So if you know them and they're happy for you to supply that, and they can sign up to the local plan update on the website as well, that would be really helpful. Thanks.
That's that's a really good reminder. Thank you very much. Councillor Mather.
Just making my usual point about open space. There was reference to access to open space as being part of the quality of life, and I completely agree with that. We have our open space strategy, and I seem to remember that this has shown something that we already know, that there is a deficit of informal open space in Winchester, and then I think also there is a deficit of natural green space that is accessible, easily accessible from the city centre. So it's all very well, because Winchester appears to be surrounded and, you know, by substantial green belt all the way around it, but just to be aware that that's not actually accessible. Even in the ward that I represent, you might think, I mean, you look at it, St Michael's from the air, and it looks as if it's about half green space, but most of that is Winchester College playing fields, or farming land owned by St Cross. We do have a shortage, and the more that we infill in Winchester, the more it creates a problem where we have more and more people with fewer and fewer areas where they can go for recreation, and nothing has highlighted that more than COVID. And how are we going to feed that into kind of the background information to enable people to send in their consultation responses?
Thank you. I completely agree with those sentiments. It's something that we saw demonstrated in St Bart's especially during the first lockdown period, where the playgrounds were closed, where people in Winnell were finding it very difficult to access open space with their play area, which also contains green open space, unable to be used. So, Mr Fox, did you want to respond?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. One of the things we are doing is, and it's very important in terms of obviously developing the local plan, is we're doing a baseline assessment of existing green infrastructure. And I use the word green infrastructure because it covers a lot of obviously different areas of open space, and blue infrastructure as well, because that's equally important. So we are doing that baseline. That baseline's coming to a conclusion. It's not yet finished, and we will be developing a green infrastructure strategy building on the back of that. And that links in very nicely with the call for sites, because, like I say, there might be areas that could come forward that would be suitable for obviously green infrastructure to connect areas together. And again, we'd be very interested to hear if obviously there are key areas that obviously we need to look at to connect those areas together. And clearly, obviously, the importance of green infrastructure, I know myself, living in Winchester, is really important. So yes, we are very, very keen and alert to that, but very much obviously trying to look at it. But if there are areas that we need to specifically look at, now is a good time to obviously start those conversations with ourselves and our landscape team to see how we can connect those areas together and obviously improve them. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr Higgs, I noted you put your hand up. Unfortunately, this isn't a session where the public get to ask questions. I'm sure Mr Fox will be more than willing for you to participate in the consultation period, but I just wanted to check why your hand was up. Was it an error, or did you want to?
Well, yes, I mean, thank you for inviting me on this. If it's not right for me to ask a question, I won't, but I just did have a question which I just felt was relevant to this discussion.
No, unfortunately, I think it would be unfair if you got to ask your question when other members of the public don't get that opportunity at this point. But please feel free to please do participate in the consultation process, and it's great that you feel engaged in the process. So please do participate. Councillor Hutchison, I think you were next.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Adrian, again for a really good presentation and the comments that have come forward, particularly from Mike Presk. I just really wanted to reiterate, I think we've got a lot of overlap between this session and the next item on the agenda, which is, of course, the vision. And in the discussions that took place earlier on for the strategic issues and priorities, it was stated that actually the Town Forum was going to be working on its plan for taking this forward as a result and following on from the vision. And so I think just wanted to sort of remind Town Forum members that we will be really doing that work. We've got a meeting on next week following on from the vision, which so we are sort of confusing slightly the two agenda items, but when we will begin that particular process, and rather than come back again, I'll just mention now that one of the key things that came out of the vision process was the 15-minute city, obviously, but also the need for that fine grain mapping, which shouldn't be left to developers, but we will need to begin to have a plan for Winchester town as part of that process. And that's certainly something that going forward, I think the town forum will have a lot of work, and I hope it'll be really exciting and creative work that we can all do together.
Thank you. Mr. Fox, did you want to respond?
Thank you, Jen. The only thing I will say is obviously that we are keen to kind of embed any ideas into the local plan itself. So we don't have my suggestion would be that we don't have a plan for Winchester itself. It's embedded into the local plan work, because I think it would sit very nicely there, and we can be supportive of obviously kind of ideas as they come forward, clearly as we have with the vision for Winchester. But clearly, obviously, it is a plan for the whole district, but we would like to embed kind of any ideas or suggestions that come forward as part of that work, particularly in terms of obviously if there are areas that we need to look at in terms of areas of change. Thank you.
Councillor Ferguson, you are next.
Thank you, Councillor Becker. Are you sure it's me and I'm not somebody else?
Yeah. Oh, Councillor Hutchison, do you want to turn off your camera? It might assist Councillor Ferguson's connection.
Can you see me now?
We can see you, but we can't hear you particularly well. Perhaps you want to turn off your camera. It might also help.
I'm in rural East Anglia.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, try now.
Can you hear me now?
Not particularly well, no. Do you want to put your question in the chat and I can read it out on your behalf?
Sorry, can you hear me now?
No.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you much better now. Yeah.
Right. Thank you. My apologies. I'm in a. You can't see me because it's very dark. Okay. Sorry, Mr. Fox. Sorry, everybody in the town forum. One of the question I wanted to ask were the two questions really. The first one is, one of the things I like most about being a resident of Winchester is how distinctive the neighbourhoods are of the city. They have their own identity, and even though we sit here as a town forum, we each represent a different ward, and within our ward they are not particularly homogeneous in any way. So for example, I represent St Bart's. Hyde is very different to Abbots Barton. Abbots Barton and Hyde are different to Winnell. So a question I have is, how through the local plan process can we actually, what can we do to protect the distinctiveness of those neighbourhoods? And it's slightly linked also to where we have development of sort of green sites or sites in people's back gardens. How do we stop it all merging together and just becoming one? So that's really on the distinctiveness of the neighbourhoods and the places within the city. And the second point is around our employment space. We know as part of the government's review of planning regulations, the planning process, they're looking to really increase permitted development rights. So what can we do in our local plan to protect the few employment sites that we have in the city, particularly in Winnell, Bar End and elsewhere, so that those aren't lost over time? So we end up with a lot of houses, but nowhere for people to work. And if we have a population that's very keen to have this 15-minute community, that's obviously going to be really important. We don't just want to be a dormitory town with no places to work. So what, again, can the local plan do to protect those employment spaces? Thank you, and thank you everybody for your patience.
Thank you. No, that came through absolutely perfectly clearly. Thank you. Mr. Fox.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think the distinctive neighbourhoods is something that's very close to my heart, actually, because in terms of obviously making sure they are protected and how we can do that. Clearly, with the government changes in the white paper, that kind of echoes how they obviously see the kind of designation or zoning of the settlements moving forward in terms of protect, renewal and growth. And I think that could be picked up in the kind of idea for design codes, etc. Clearly, we're not at that stage yet. But obviously, like I say, that's one key way that obviously the local distinctiveness can be picked up is through obviously local design codes. And whether or not they've done on a kind of individual area or how we do that, like I say, we can look at that. But there are clearly proposals in the white paper about how you kind of divide or subdivide kind of areas up and pick up on those important characteristics. Clearly, if an area's got obviously a conservation area, you can do a conservation area character area appraisal and obviously pick up on the local distinctiveness there, which is obviously a good tool to obviously to pick up. But obviously appreciate that not all the areas obviously you mentioned have got conservation areas, but I think obviously moving forward, obviously the government is very alert to that about how local areas do have distinctive neighbourhoods and areas and then what we want to protect and what's special about them, so that we can obviously identify if there is further growth, what type of growth we actually want there. In terms of the employment spaces, clearly the government has recently, I think it closed today, consulted on more changes to the permitted development rights, which obviously does undermine and obviously is not supportive, obviously, town centres. We are obviously responding to that consultation, and I believe yourself has obviously helped to inform that response. We will be obviously trying to seek protection for obviously the large employment sites that you've mentioned in terms of Winnell and Bar End. And in terms of what the local plan can actually do, we need to give that careful consideration. I'm afraid I haven't got any specific answers to give you now, but it will be the next stage of the journey that we embark on in terms of how can we shape those local plan policies to give the best possible protection. Because like I say, it's no point just planning for housing. We must plan for employment and we must plan for accessible employment space. And obviously give them as much protection as we can, recognising obviously the government is kind of changing the goalposts, so to speak, in terms of the permitted development rights. But it is an important issue and we will be taking it very seriously at the next stage of the local plan. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think we've got any other anyone else who has registered to ask a question, so I just had a couple from me. Are there any particular plans for specific engagement with younger people? I know you said that you wanted to target younger people, but will there be, for example, special sessions set aside for younger people, or given that this plan is until 2038 and it will be the younger people who are mostly affected by it?
Thank you, Chair. We are keen to engage with as many people as possible, and clearly, obviously, the younger generation, as you said, is obviously who this plan is for, really, because obviously it's looking forward, obviously, to 2038. There is obviously the young person's strategy work that's going on at the moment in terms of obviously how and what type of housing people want in the future, and that work will fit very nicely into the evidence base for the local plan. We haven't at this stage got any specific events arranged with the younger people in terms of how we can do that. Clearly at the moment schools are struggling with obviously homeschooling and how we can actually go into that. We are keen to reach out to the schools though, and we are in contact with the Hampshire County Council lead in terms of obviously young people to make sure obviously we get out there in terms of the newsletter about the local plan. But I am welcome to ideas about how we can reach out to the younger generation, because like I say, it is a particularly important group in terms of how we move forward. So I am open for suggestions how we can actually do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Porter, I saw your hand pop up there. Did you have something to add?
I wasn't sure if I'd be allowed to speak, but I just wanted to just say that following Anne's and Councillor Weir's and Councillor Trask's question, I just wondered if Mr. Fox would like to outline the current position with gardens and the way in which houses are developed with gardens, because obviously we've seen quite a lot of change there over the last in their ward over the last 10 years, and the law is or the NPPF is slightly different now, and how we would need to reflect that in any future planning arrangements if we wanted to protect those gardens still further.
Mr. Fox.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Porter. I believe you're mentioning it's the definition of the brownfield sites, which is in the NPPF, in terms of obviously what is a brownfield site and what's not a brownfield site. And like I say, I would refer you to that definition. I'm not going to read it out again tonight, but I would refer you specifically to that definition, which obviously is very clear that brownfield land does not include garden land in the built-up area. Clearly, as we move forward, particularly coming out of the COVID pandemic, gardens are becoming increasingly kind of people's sanctuaries, people's areas that they can go to, and becoming increasingly important. And that's obviously linked to the type of places and the type of housing that we plan for in the future, and making sure people have got that private open space and accessible green infrastructure around them. And I think that's a really important point in terms of obviously the type of housing that people are wanting in the future may well change as a result of obviously coming out of COVID. And I know I particularly value my garden. I talk to Councillor Porter on it on a regular basis about what I'm doing in there. So like I say, it's a particularly valuable asset that we want to protect and obviously plan for in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. In the interest of time, sorry, I've got a fly here. I won't continue with my other question. I'll raise that with you separately, but thank you very much. That was such an engaging presentation. I think we will all go away and make sure that all of our networks of contacts engage with the process so that we can develop a plan that is brilliant for the next, 17 years. So thank you very much. The next paper dovetails quite nicely into the into this issue. It's the paper in respect of the vision for Winchester and its formal adoption. You will recall that at our last meeting we had a very in-depth presentation from Boyle and Summers setting out the process that had gone into the development of the draft documents, which were then launched to the public on the 1st of December through an open forum online session, to which there were a lot of people there. So this paper, I'm very pleased to say, recommends that the Town Forum adopts the suite of documents, the handbooks 1, 2 and 3 of the Vision for Winchester that has been the culmination of the One Great Win work. And I just wanted to thank everyone for all their hard work on this on this project over the past 12 months in very difficult circumstances. Councillor Porter, as the Cabinet member, I just wanted to double check if you had anything else that you wanted to add before we go into questions.
I'm really pleased and looking forward to hearing comments about it. I'm here to listen, not to talk. So I want to make sure, though, that the public realise there's a difference between the vision for Winchester in the local plan and your vision, which is something that you're actually operating on a practical term right from day one.
Yeah.
So I look forward to listening. Look forward to hearing your views.
Lovely. Thank you very much. So questions. Who has questions on this paper and the vision? Oh, Councillor Looney.
Sorry, I was having trouble unmuting myself.
No, that's all right. I can hear the clicks.
Slow. Yeah, kind of both a question and a comment, and this kind of follows on from Councillor Ferguson's point on the local plan, and I wondered how this fits in, which is that you know, I'm very supportive of the overall approach, particularly things like the 15-minute neighbourhood, but a lot of that can fall apart if everybody in Winchester has to drive out of the city to work. The mentions of employment in the document are almost entirely around either, you know, just the need to get to work or around creative work. You know, there's almost a very middle class lens on this. You know, the protection of areas like Winnell, for example, and the employment that we find there is very important, I think, to us as a city. But those kind of issues have skated over. If anything, it suggests that they'd be good places for housing. So I'd just like to understand how this will fit in with our overall district plan around that employment piece.
Thank you, Mr. Oh, got a bit of an echo there. Mr. Finch, did you want to jump in?
I'm happy to do that. And if I say anything wrong, I know Mr. Fox will correct me. So as he's the policy expert, but no, that's quite right. I think it was quite a sort of bottom-up document, which is one of its strengths. But also, you're right. We do need to make sure that it's clearly not the only basis for planning for Winchester, but it's a really good input into that plan making process. But what Mr. Fox mentioned briefly earlier, picking up on Councillor Ferguson's question, is we all do tend to get a little bit focused on the housing because it's often the most headline catching thing about making a local plan. But of equal importance is the economy, the town centre, including as part of that, and places like Winnell, Bar End, etc., which are the employment places, because what is part of sustainable development, as you've mentioned there, really is making sure that people do not have to travel, you know, to go to work. We're in a slightly unusual position in the sense that we're the county town, so a small city, but that does attract a lot of commuters. But you're absolutely right. We've got policies within the existing local plan which seek to protect those areas for employment. And without prejudging what goes into the new local plan, I think we can anticipate that we will have policies designed specifically around employment. So I think that's really important, and it has to be a balanced plan. It's not just a plan for housing, it's a plan for the economy, you know, socioeconomic conditions taken into account, you know, the green economy, etc. So that's very important. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Councillor Hutchison.
Thank you very much indeed again, and I really welcome all the comments that we've had, and particularly the comment from Mr. Fox about the fact that the vision needs, and the plan for Winchester needs to fit into the local plan. I think that I'd really like to again commend the vision work, which I think has been really interesting. It's just the very tip of the iceberg at the beginning of the journey for the town forum as well as for the town. And so these points are really important, that we can make sure that we embed them and find the most effective way to go forward. I completely agree with the points that have been made with regard to employment and making sure that we have the 15-minute city. Of course, it's trying to get the right balances in different areas. And in particular, a focus, I think, which would come forward from that is very much on mixed use development. So you don't necessarily see everything all in one place. And look, I think the exciting element of the 15-minute city is that it is a focus on neighbourhoods and making sure that all different neighbourhoods meet the different requirements, both in terms of design and the design differences between different neighbourhoods, but also the different neighbourhoods and making sure that they have the right balance of easily accessible facilities. So just really to re-emphasise, it's the very beginning of a journey. I think it's an exciting one, and I think that the work that has been done for the vision so far has really put us in a very good position, and I look forward to the next stages.
Thank you very much. Councillor Scott, you've got a question.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. With moving forward with the Town Forum vision, which I absolutely endorsed last time, and I thought it was a very good presentation by the guys and girls, actually. Just sort of in line with the current also cabinet policy on under their section of houses for all, in building up communities, not just housing. I think Councillor Ferguson made a really good point about the different dynamics about the communities and neighbourhoods around our wards. We have our own sort of similarities, but we have some different identities as well. And sometimes we have similarities as in impact of HMOs, and sometimes it's greater, sometimes it's less in other parts of the communities and the old traditional council estates. Just moving forward, we need to identify really what really makes communities tick. Bear in mind, a lot of communities, Highcliffe, Stamwell, and etc., have lost pubs where communities would have gathered and socialised at times, obviously pre-COVID and all that sort of stuff. And some old community facilities are looking a sort of bit, but you know, had their day really, and could be with enhancing. So actually, when we move forward, I think Simon's quite correct when he said it's not just about supplying housing numbers, which is obviously what will be the driving factor for the government, but it's actually how we sort of build as a city, build as communities, build as neighbourhoods, and what infrastructure we put in, how we save the green spaces, how we enhance the green spaces, and how we really sort of utilise the well-being and the health of our residents as well. So not sure if that's a question again, Chair, but maybe that's a statement as well and a comment. But really, basically, I do agree with us moving forward, and hopefully this vision of Winchester will really enhance into the central local plan, and hopefully the government inspector would accept it. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that has been a focus and has been a clear point that has come out of the vision work, is that people feel really connected to their communities and they want to enable their communities to do more, don't necessarily want the council to do everything for them. They want to be empowered and enabled to help themselves and reflect from within their community what they want in the neighbourhood, rather than being told what they ought to have in the neighbourhood. So I think that community work is going to be critical moving forward as we embed the vision into normal working practices. Thank you. We've got no more questions, then we'll move into debate. If there's any debate on this matter. Nope. So, Councillor Hiscock. Oh, Councillor Hiscock. Oh, you two are too quick. Councillor Hiscock.
Sorry, we were too slow, really. Can you hear me on that? I just wanted to say that, like the others, I'm very excited by this. I was been around long enough to remember the last time we did one of these exercises as a vision, and it was nothing like this. And I think this is going to be very much better, and I hope it has more influence than the other one did. The other one was a bit more sketchy. But it didn't go into the sort of detail that this did, and it didn't really give any atmospheric feedback about what people wanted, and I think this is a lot better. I'm excited by the whole idea of the 15-minute city. If it's 20 minutes, so be it, but let's start by saying if it's going to be 15 minutes. And the difference that'll make on things like installing small local shops and changing the way that trade and retail will happen. It's going to change anyway, and I think it's important that we give the opportunities to people that want to have shops and want to be traders to trade locally in a small community. I think that's important that we can achieve that, and that'll help create the atmospheres that we need and the interest that we need. I'd like to see a cafe within 15 minutes of everybody's house with a table outside that people can enjoy and meet and feel part of the community from. So yeah, that's the most important thing. And to do that, of course, we need to be able to get the walking right. And I've been working a long time with several others in this room to try and achieve that. It's not been easy, and I think we will need the sort of incentive that the cultural change that this, hopefully this new vision will create, the sort of change that needs to get the impetus going to make the changes that we need to our walking routes. I'm excited by that as well. So let's just carry on. Let's look forward to achieving a lot more than we have done recently. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just needed to get in there really quickly before you moved on. Yeah, I've been taking the time over the last few days to really read through all these documents and really sort of understand where they're coming from, because like Councillor Hiscock earlier, I do remember the previous vision, and indeed I was a member of the panel who formed that one, and this version is goes far beyond the work that we did all those years ago, and it really is a fantastic comprehensive piece of work, covering so many aspects of the city, and making sure as well that a wide demographic of people were talked to, and of course it was all carried out in really difficult circumstances. National pandemic, there was a window of opportunity, I suppose, during the summer months when sort of face-to-face interviews could take place, but other than that it was all sort of online, and I think there's lots that we can learn about that and how the consultation was carried out, because obviously we're going to be in this situation for some while. I think the really exciting bit for me was that the whole document talks about enabling, and I think we need to accept that we, the council, have to realise that we just can't do it all. We neither have the financial resources to do it all, or frankly the staff capacity, and kind of to really look at. So for me, the section starting at 6.8 gives us a really clear steer on this and asks some really pertinent questions around the need for us as a council to look at how we might help our communities, enable our communities to get on and do stuff, not by just saying off you go, do it on your own, obviously keeping having some involvement, but in a supportive role rather than sort of well, you know, we'd like you to do X. I think also the important thing was, again, earlier in I'm talking about section 3, by the way, it says that one of the findings came out that we didn't need to map out plans and developments, but we needed to consider how change can take place. And I mean, I'm a really firm believer that all cities or all communities really need to evolve and change, and Winchester is no different. And if we're going to thrive, we will need to look at how we can change. And I also thought it was interesting that the feedback was that we needed to shift away from the big projects and concentrate on building resilient communities that all gel together, which I think is another really important point. And I know we've also said that we really don't want this report to just sit on the shelf. And reading through all the many sections, I've been really inspired to make sure that that really doesn't happen. And I think this will form a really valuable contribution to the work of the local plan that is going on right now. And I know that we're going to note the documents here tonight, but I really look forward to going forward and looking towards the future, where we work out how we can actually start implementing some of the recommendations that are in section 3. So it's a fantastic document. Very, very happy to note it and look forward to other items on our agenda in the future that can bring some of this to fruition. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councillor Scott, did you have something to add? You did. Your comment before was pretty much debate, so just in the interests of time, given it's 20:07 already, was there something?
No, I can reserve. I can reserve that. That's fine, thanks.
Cool. No, thank you very much. That's very kind. So if there is no more, oh, Councillor Krask, sorry, sneaking on in there again.
Sorry,
That's all right.
you've got to be quick, Chair. I just wanted to thank all the people who from around Winchester who got involved in the vision. I think we should thank the people that did that just as a town forum, because without them and without their contribution, it wouldn't be the document and it wouldn't be the vision that it is. So thank you all that contributed. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Steal my words out from under me. So if there are no further debate, the recommendation is that the town forum adopts the suite of documents, that's handbooks 1, 2 and 3, as the vision for Winchester. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
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 Fantastic. Thank you. And on a personal note, this has been an absolutely inspiring piece of work to work on for the past year. The team has been brilliant, both the council team, the officer team, the public, the members of Boyle and Summers. We've all worked really hard and really well together, and I think this is such an exciting opportunity for the city. So thank you all again. And I do encourage anyone listening to go and read these handbooks. As Councillor Thompson said, they are absolutely inspiring. You can't walk away reading them and feel really down in the dumps. It really is inspiring and just makes you think, well, what can I do? What can I do next? What can we do as a city to make this a better place to live? So please do go and read them. The next item on the agenda relates to the sport pavilions, and I know the members of the public here tonight wanted to speak on this item. So Mr. Higgs and Mr. Caldwell, the order I have you in, Mr. Higgs first, followed by Mr. Caldwell, if that's all right. Oh, thank you, Mr. Fox.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Just to explain, we're Winchester City Flyers. We're an all girls and ladies football club in Winchester, and we are the largest in Hampshire of such. And I also represent the Hampshire Girls Youth Football League, which is the largest in the south of England. Traditionally, our home was the Garrison. But obviously with the plans for the new leisure centre, the proposal was that we had to move, and we engaged with the council over a long period, and we were moved to King George. One of the main points of the move, which was agreed with the Football Foundation and Sport England as their approval for the plans, was for a new fit for purpose pavilion. And since 2018, nothing really seemed to have moved. And I was very concerned to learn earlier in the year that those plans, whilst other pavilion plans were going ahead, the KGV pavilion was on hold. We raised a bit of noise, and I'm glad to see that that's now back on the agenda. And I've had a look at the plans, and they do look really rather good. But really, I just want to know, if possible, what sort of realistic timescales are being looked at as to when this pavilion will happen. As a club and a league, you know, women's football and girls' football is growing massively year on year. It's not going to decrease. It's just going to get bigger. And clubs and leagues such as ours need the facilities in place to make sure that we can continue that growth and give the girls what they want, which is the ability to play football. So that really is from me. My only other point, I know I wasn't allowed to speak earlier, and I fully understand, and if I'm still not allowed to, that's fine, but I did email my question to Councillor Cook, who's passed it on to Mr. Fox, and I just wondered if this was a relevant time for that question to be asked and answered. Thank you.
Mr. Fox has now left. Thank you very much for that presentation. I'm afraid Mr. Fox has now left the meeting. So I'll pass that on to him and ensure that he gets back to you on that question.
Thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Caldwell.
Good evening, Chair, and good evening, councillors and officers. My name is Mike Caldwell. I'm a trustee of the Pavilion Project and speak for the group this evening. The Pavilion Project welcomes the report to this evening's Town Forum meeting. We're pleased that there will now be a thorough value engineering process and, if necessary, amendments to the design to bring the construction cost within budget. Assuming the Pavilion Project scheme remains the preferred option, we shall reapproach our major donors to see if they might help us close the financial gap too. There is, however, an important error in item 12.2 of the report before you. The footprint of the North Walls Pavilion, including the two integral covered terraces, is 345 metres square. With a total project cost of £800,000, this equates to a little over 2,300 per square metre, not £3,600 per square metre as stated in the report. Even if the calculation is made using internal measurements, the resultant figure is a little over £2,500 per square metre, which is comparable with the cost of the much larger proposed pavilion at KGV. It should also be noted that the report makes no mention of future income for the pavilions at North Walls and KGV. Whilst we recognise that council reports must deal in facts rather than speculation, research that the Pavilion Project team has undertaken clearly shows that the new all-year-round pavilion at North Walls will see a huge uptake in user visits, which in turn, and if well managed, will result in increased income for the City Council. We welcome too the formation of a project board to include a representative of the Pavilion Project to manage the process going forward. This will not only help with better communication between the City Council and the Pavilion Project team, but it will also, we hope, create the basis for a model of joint working between community groups and the City Council in future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, I think Mr. Botham is introducing this paper.
Thank you, Chair. Matthew, yeah, I think Matthew was just moving the camera, so I'll come with the shot. So
I'll move out of shot.
Only just about. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the purpose of this paper is to bring forward updates on the progress with the pavilions at North Walls and King George V playing fields. If I start with the North Walls part and then move on to the KGV facilities after that. With regard to the North Walls Pavilion, Town Forum have been talking about and working on this proposal for many years now. And that culminated in the report to the January meeting of last year's Town Forum, where you determined to move forward with the pavilion project proposals. You identified additional funding to support that work, and since that time, officers have worked up the detail for the scheme and gone out to the market to seek tenders. Members will be aware those tenders have come back in at the end of last year significantly higher than we were projecting. And we are currently assessing what we do about that. We have gone back to those tenderers to seek some value engineering proposals. That didn't get us anywhere close to the budget available, and so at this stage we're not in a position to proceed with the build as planned and as it had previously been published. What we have since done, though, is we have worked up a number of options that we've gone back to tenderers again with and asked them to review them and provide fresh prices for. And some of those options will be quite significant, so we are hopeful that that will get us closer towards the budget that is available for the build. Some may not be acceptable to Town Forum, and that's something that we need to think, how do we go about assessing those options if those prices come back in and get us close to something that we feel we can fund. Then we need to determine how we make that judgments on that, and that I'll come forward with the recommendation around that in a minute. Just by way of an update, we have asked tenderers to submit those prices by the 15th of February as a deadline. And then we need to determine, okay, what do we then? How do we then review those options, see whether that gets us to where we want to be, and move forward. Now, if that gets us to within the project budget, then that could well keep the project on track. We need to consider whether that requires any additional planning approvals or amendments to the planning permission as well. So some things that we need to work through. Up until now, we've worked with the informal member group for North Walls on this project, and we can still do that. That could be the forum which you use to determine that. The report recommends, though, that we take a more formal approach to that and establish a board that could review those options, make some judgments. If they're within the scope of what Town Forum have already supported, then we can move forward with the project. If they require a further view of Town Forum because they are so significant that it's something different, then obviously they would need to bring a report back on that basis. So the report seeks approval to continue with that process. Obviously, we will get to the revised prices on the 15th of February, but how we then move from there is really for you to determine this evening. If I then move on to the King George V proposals in the report, at the same meeting last year, Town Forum considered options for the King George V pavilion replacement. It's obviously a much larger facility. It's to service a broader range of sports, and because of that, obviously, is an expensive proposal. I think at that time we were costing the options at approximately 1.2 million. That cost has increased over the last year, and we're now bringing forward. We've developed with members through of the King George V informal group. We've reviewed those options, come up with worked up a proposal which we feel is in a state now where we can take forward. But to take it further forward, we need to start incurring some costs. So the key areas there we're asking for a Town Forum review tonight is on the potential funding options, because as things stand, we have some open space money set aside. We have discussions with sports bodies around some grant funding, but that still leaves us some way short of being able to deliver a pavilion at KGV. And the recommendation of the report is that if we want to move forward on this process, we need to consider options, and the report recommends considering a mix of district and town community infrastructure levy funding for that purpose. So that's for Town Forum to determine is that something you're in a position to support. If it is, then a recommendation go on to Cabinet to secure that funding, and then also to allow officers to start incurring some expenditure on working up that proposal in more detail, getting it through planning. And if we can get it to that stage, then the full business case will come back to Town Forum before we then go out and seek tenders. Just to come back on the point that Mr. Caldwell made around the unit costings, the unit costings weren't in there in any way to call into question the North Wall proposals. You approved the funding for the North Wall proposals last year. What we are conscious of is obviously the proposals for KGV it's a more expensive build. And it really was just to place context on the fact that it's not a higher cost per square metre. Mr. Caldwell has understandably questioned the figures on North Walls, and we have Graham Todd on the call who can get into detail about that if members want to get into details about that. They are based on internal areas, not on the viewing gallery at KGV and not on the terraces at North Walls. So the surveyors have worked up the figures on that basis, but purely there as an indicator about the cost of the KGV pavilion is not excessive. It's just a much bigger pavilion that's required to service the amount of users at that location. Probably said enough now, Chair. Happy to take any questions on detail on either pavilion. So.
Thank you. I'll move back. So, Councillor Scott, you've got the first question.
Yeah, a couple of questions, please, Chair. When the pavilions were originally built many years ago, and many years ago I played in the football leagues, you wouldn't believe that now looking at me, the Town Forum didn't exist. So who originally paid for the pavilions, a couple of pavilions in King George V area and the North Walls? That's my first question. Who paid for that many years ago? Was it the council direct or someone else? Because the Town Forum didn't exist then. And my second question was, Mr. Caldwell, through, I don't know, it was a full council, someone asked to meet the leader and some representation of the cabinet to discuss his proposals and the costings for the North Walls Pavilion, because it looked as though at one stage it was literally not going to happen, and obviously clearly he was very concerned. Now, did that meeting happen, and what was the conclusions? What are you going to share with us, the members of the Town Forum, tonight regarding the meeting with Mr. Caldwell and his colleagues?
Thanks. Yeah, Mr. Botham, do you want to?
I'll try and answer both. I don't think I can answer the first one. The first one, the pavilions are very old, whether they were built by the City Council or the predecessor of the City Council. I don't have the history to that. Yeah, I would accept they probably do predate the Town Forum, but obviously the constitution of the Town Forum has worked up the fact that now, being a city facility, the North Walls Pavilion is comes under the remit of the Town Forum. The reason that we're proposing a mix of district and council for the KGV facility is just the number of users that use that from across the district, not just the city. So that's where I think a case can be made for an application for district community infrastructure levy for the KGV, whereas the North Walls facility is more of a central city facility. So that's the difference there. But unfortunately, I don't have the history to say who previously funded the North Walls Pavilion. As far as the question at council to the leader did respond to that question. I think it wasn't from Mr. Caldwell, it was from Mr. Gottlieb. I think
There was one from Mr. Gottlieb and one from Councillor
from one of the councillors.
Lumby.
But the leader did ask officers to liaise with the architects and the pavilion project if there was an option of going back for further value engineering. We had already done some value engineering. If there was an option for going back and doing more, the leader did give an assurance at council that we would do that, and that is exactly the process we're now following. I'm in communication with Mr. Caldwell on that matter at the moment as well. So that was the outcome of the discussions with the leader. I don't know, Councillor Thompson, whether you want to say any more on that.
Yes, very happy to. Yes, a meeting did take place. I wasn't available for that meeting, but there were 3 cabinet members there, and the recommendations that you're seeing here are a result of that meeting. So yeah, just like to reassure everybody that the meeting took place. Okay.
Yeah, Councillor Scott, I can assure you the meeting took place because I was at that meeting. So, and it was I feel it was a productive meeting. Councillor Looney has put in the chat, just for the purposes of the record, that town expenses paid for facilities for the town, such as playgrounds, sports facilities, etc., before the Town Forum was created. So I think that helps to answer your first question in relation to who paid for the pavilions.
I mean, I just obviously want to acknowledge how must be very frustrating for the KGV flyers and obviously Mr. Caldwell and his colleagues with North Walls, and obviously can understand the expenses and the budget restrictions, but I do think, and Mr. Botham mentioned it in his presentation, that this has been going on for many years. So it would be very good if we could draw some conclusions to these matters.
Thank you. Councillor Weir, you're next with a question.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of questions. I would be grateful if Mr. Todd could give us an update on those comparative costs per square metre between the current North Walls proposal and the KGV plans. And secondly, Mr. Caldwell referred to his expectation that the North Walls Pavilion would be he suggested or implied, I may have misunderstood him, that it could be a net contributor to council finances. Now, I think this came up at a previous meeting. Similar suggestions were made. I was just wondering whether the pavilion project, or anybody else for that matter, had come forward with a business plan that would demonstrate how that could be achieved. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Botham, did you want to?
If I could ask Mr. Todd to
Todd
ask
first.
the first question, and I'll pick up the second.
Mr. Todd.
Thank you. Comparison costs have been based on gross internal floor areas, not including the terraces on either pavilion, and are simply indicative. We have checked the figures on on the latest information received from the architect on the actual gross internal floor area, which is smaller than assumed, and accept the North Walls figure is too high but remains in excess of £3,000 per metre squared and is higher than the KGV, which is expected and understandable as it is a smaller pavilion. I'm happy to go into more detail if required, or we can review it when we get the revised tenders in. Thank you, Chair.
And Mr. Botham for the second part.
Yeah, the second part, the point Mr. Caldwell raised around the potential to generate income from the a new pavilion at North Walls was discussed, I think, at some length at Town Forum in January last year. Pavilion project did bring forward some suggestions of how that might look. It wasn't in the form of a business case. It wasn't in the form of evidence, and I wouldn't expect that because obviously it is. But it was positive suggestions of how that could work. And I think Town Forum accepted at that time that yes, there is clearly some scope to generate more income from a building that is available for use all year round. What we did consider at that time, though, that it would be dangerous to base a business case around income that might occur, and especially with what's happened over the course of the last year, you know, the demand on facilities like this may be much higher, may be much less, and obviously income is under real pressure at the council at the moment. We wouldn't, even if we were to set some, you know, sort of quite well, say high fees for that sort of facility, or fees that would encourage greater use, it wouldn't have significantly made a difference to the business case. Our income on sports facilities, pitches, pavilions, and make a contribution. They certainly don't cover costs of operation. So that's why we determined at the time last year it would be safer not to assume income from that, but obviously Town Forum, I think, recognised the fact that will clearly make a positive contribution once the facility is open and running, and that's one of the reasons why we supported a pavilion that was for much broader use than the current pavilion is able to use for. Why it needs the heating insulation to make sure that it is fully operational throughout the winter. Some of the value engineering options being brought forward by tenderers were suggesting reducing insulation, reducing heating, and that's the sort of thing that members will need to consider carefully before they move forward, because they will impact on how the building could be used. But we're certainly not recommending anything like that. It's a very positive facility as designed. If we can get it within budget, that would be excellent. But obviously a lot of work to go on before then.
Great, thank you. Who's next? Councillor Hiscock. Sorry, I can't speak tonight. Councillor Hiscock.
Yeah. Good evening. Hello again. Just a couple of quick points. First of all, I absolutely endorse the suggestion in the paper that a separate group is set up to look at this rather than the North Walls group. The North Walls group's got enough to do, and I think hopefully this will be over fairly quickly. They better look at it. It'll take all the time that the meeting will take, and it's important, I think, that it's focused. So I think it is important that there is a separate group set up. I'd just like to endorse that. And the other thing is going back to the point about the possible income generated by this. I feel it would be nice to have, and it probably will produce something. But if it doesn't produce enough money or doesn't become cash positive, there's a danger that it will become regarded as a failure, and I think that'd be a great mistake, because it's not there to make money. It's there to provide a service and a facility for people playing sport, and sport is its own thing. It's not a fundraiser. It's sport, and I think we just have to be clear on what we're doing and why on this. I think that's probably all I've got to say at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. I noticed that everyone else wanting to speak is asking for comment rather than a question. Are there any further questions before we move into debate? No, then we'll continue. We'll move into debate. And Councillor Mather, you're next. Councillor Mather.
Yes, I'm sorry, I've got a few buttons to press before I get.
That's right.
Thank you, I should have anticipated. Yes, I think very much hope we can continue moving on with this constructively. They're both excellent projects. I think I've known of the North Walls one for a long time, since I was a county councillor, and I think I probably gave a humble £1,000 out of my county council delegated budget pot, and The amount of work that has been put in by the team whose original concept it was, led by Mike Caldwell, it's just a fantastic effort, and it's I so hope that we continue to work constructively with it. The Highcliffe Pavilion will be fantastic. I very much hope that we can do all we can to bring that project forward, adapt it to the funds that are available, and so thoroughly in support of all of them and of all the recommendations. And thank you for anyone who's been any help. Thank you.
Councillor Kresk.
Thank you. I think similarly, I very much welcome the idea of a new project board. And maybe with the background of the vision for Winchester, using it as a blueprint for how the council and the community can work together. Maybe hopefully starting afresh, perhaps with a blank sheet of paper, looking at how this can be done and learning from previous work, and looking forward to the future and looking to create a new model for working together. If that could be achieved, then that I think would be a fantastic learning point from all of this. I would like to see, and Mr. Botham, you mentioned it previously, there was talk about a business plan, at least for the North Walls. And I think that's a good thing to have, and we should have that. There are going to be ongoing maintenance costs for both pavilions, and opportunities to generate revenue. And we do need to understand what that revenue is and how that compares to the costs. It's not just about the finances, but it's also about making sure that we have a strategy and structure in place to maximise the opportunity for people to engage and to use the facilities. And I would like to understand how these facilities are going to be marketed, how they're going to be promoted, who they're going to be promoted to, at what price, who's going to do that, and what is our strategy for making the most and promoting these facilities. So I think it is an important piece, not just financially, but in terms of making sure these facilities are successful and seem to be successful. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Looney.
Thank you, Chair. It's my name on the paper, so I won't actually talk about the details of that, because you can take my support of the recommendations as read. I'd just like to say that I was really pleased that Mr. Higgs came to join us this evening to remind everybody of effectively the promises that we made around the KGV pavilion. I think we spent an awful lot of time talking about North Walls, which is a very good project, and I don't want to diminish that, but the KGV is in danger of getting a bit lost, and I think that's really important. I think it's important to emphasise that will be, a district facility, that as a centre for girls and women's football, it's something that we have the potential to be really proud of as a sporting centre, not just as a building. And I think it's really important that we don't forget that. There has been some mention made of the potential for fundraising. I think some of us have been through that before with the Winchester athletics track. I don't think Tommy Geddes, who many of you will remember from the university, ever forgave us for the over-optimistic predictions of the income that would accrue for the university. So we do have to be very wary and really accept that we will have to bear the majority of the costs in these projects, treat them as sporting facilities, not as money generators. But, obviously I'm very supportive of the recommendations. I think it gives us a way of moving forward with both pavilions in a reasonable timescale. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Weir.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to draw everybody's attention to 13.4 that we are kicking off a round of consultation on the proposed pavilion at KGV and other improvement works in the KGV area, which will be kicked off on the 10th of February with an online public consultation, and then there will be consultation available on the web for some time after that. So I just wanted to make a note of that. 10th of February, consultation on the pavilion proposals for KGV kick-off. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you very much. And Councillor Murphy.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to share Mr Higgs' relief and enthusiasm that the King George V Pavilion is seems to be finally moving forward once again. I think it's really important for the girls and women's footballers to have just as good facilities as the boys and men. So I sort of heartily endorse this paper, and I think hopefully both pavilions will we'll get them before very long. Thank you.
Thank you. And if there's no more debate, we will move to the recommendations. The Town Forum notes progress with the procurement of the pavilion at North Walls and agrees to support proposals to amend the design for the pavilion, provided that a total project cost of £800,000 is not exceeded. Reaffirms its commitment to the delivery of replacement facilities for cricket and other community use at North Walls, and that the £595,000 funding approved in January 2020 remains available to support this commitment. Agree that if required, the corporate head of asset management will be authorised to prepare and submit a revised planning application to the City Council for the construction of the new pavilion. Agree to establish a new project board to manage the process, chaired by the Cabinet Member for Housing and Asset Management, supported by the Strategic Director of Services, with a representative of the pavilion project to be invited to join the board. Agree to support the proposals for the new pavilion at King George V Playing Fields, Highcliffe. Support the allocation of £228,000 sports open space funding to the new pavilion at KGV. Agree in principle to support the proposal to allocate £250,000 of Town Forum Community Infrastructure Levy funds for the KGV project. Agree that a formal application for district SIL money amounting to £450,000 to support the KGV project be made for Cabinet consideration. Recommend that Cabinet give authority to incur expenditure of pre-construction costs of up to £30,000 in accordance with the relevant financial procedure rules, financed by open space monies in recommendation 6, and that this work proceeds at a financial risk to the Town Forum. Agree to support the application for grant funding to the Hampshire Football Association and other bodies to support the KGV project. Agree that the corporate head of asset management be authorised to prepare and submit a planning application to the City Council for the construction of the new pavilion at KGV. Agree that the corporate head of asset management be authorised to seek quotations in accordance with the Public Contract Regulations 2015 and the Council's contract procedure rules for professional services associated with the preparation and submission of a planning application to KGV Pavilion, with the professional services listed there. And agree that a final business case report for the KGV Pavilion is brought to Town Forum to agree whether to proceed with the scheme and request competitive tenders from contractors. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. And thank you Thank you all for your participation in the preparation of this paper, and thanks to Mr Higgs and Mr Caldwell for attending tonight as well. Those were really helpful contributions, so thank you very much. The next item on the agenda, Mr Kennedy, last as always, I'm very afraid to say, is the Winchester Town Account Budget. This is found on page 91 of the agenda pack. Is Mr Kennedy here tonight?
Hello. I'm here, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Hello. How are you?
Yes, so to introduce this, as obviously as the title suggests, this paper is recommending the budget to Cabinet for 2021-22. So it's recommending the budget and the precept to be levied for 21-22. So the Town Informal Group have met 3 times as part of this process. The latest meeting was at the beginning of this month, and the comments and proposals resulting from those meetings are contained within this paper. The projections are shown in Appendix A, and they are based on a preset increase of 3%. Obviously, looking for agreement at this meeting as to what precept are set for next year. But at the moment, that's based on 3%. That is within the referendum limit for the council for next year, which is set at either 2% or +5 £, and the +5 £, gives the flexibility of just over 3% increase for both the district and the town. So that is within that, and within 11.6, the impact of that increase is shown. That would increase the precept to £73.41 for the town, giving an extra £31,000 per annum of additional income. Also reflected within the forecast is the additional properties from the increase in the council tax base for next year. That is quite a significant increase this time around. We generally forecast a 1.2% rise per annum in the MTFS, and that shows a 2.4% increase. So that's generating some additional income for next year as well. In terms of an update on some of the budget items, so we discussed about the community grants budget, and a significant proportion of that grants budget is available for bidding. 33,000 out of the £60,000 is available for the bidding process. That has been underspent for the last couple of years since it has been available for that purpose. So there is going to be some further work on exactly how that can be used in terms of linking it in with vision delivery. So therefore this paper just widens the scope of that budget to be used for community grants and also for vision delivery as well. Linking with the previous paper, obviously the 2 new pavilions are significant items within the town area. Both of those are capital expenditure items, with the town contributing towards those. So those are reflected within the projections contained in this paper as well. We had an update on the community infrastructure levy, and the total build neighbourhood SIL contributions now stands at just over £1 million. And the paper proposals a new allocation for a bid that's been made by Highcliffe Community Forum for Action. The total bid was just over £36,000, but the recommendation in the paper is to allocate an initial £10,000 for a feasibility review to understand some more about the viability of that project and other funding streams that might be sought to actually lead to a deliverable project. So that's contained within a recommendation to move forward with that. And in terms of reserves, Appendix A shows a positive position in terms of the reserves, where throughout the entire projection period we are now forecasting to meet the target of 10%. Obviously we know there are likely to be pressures on that in terms of the pavilion projects and further financial information that comes forward as a result of those. So therefore at the moment, based on projections in Appendix A, we're meeting the target, but no doubt there'll be further challenges to come in the years ahead. And I think that's it from me. Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to take comments.
Do we have any questions on Mr. Kennedy's paper? Councillor Weir, I think.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question on point 11.8 on this review. Who's involved in the review of the grants and perhaps the reallocation? And is there still a CAB award in that grant?
So in terms of it's very early stage. It's been proposed that the scope of the grants is broadened in order to be able to use that funding to meet some of the aims of the vision delivery. That, in terms of the work to move forward on that, that is to come forward, but this proposal within the budget paper is just to give scope to be able to move that forward. So the detailed proposals for exactly how that will work will come forward in due course for approval. Within this paper, it's just enabling that to be able to happen.
Okay.
And
CAB.
so so in terms of CAB, I don't believe, I'll double check the exact allocations. I don't believe that includes a contribution to the CAB.
Okay. We usually have, or we have in the past, more information, or maybe it's coming to the next town forum. Maybe that I'm getting ahead of myself. So what you're saying, though, is that a paper will come back with proposals on grants to a future meeting.
Yes, that's correct. So no formal decision is being taken on that right now. That's just giving the scope to be able to have that review and for that detailed commentary to come back to the town forum.
Thanks. Are there any further questions? Nope. Any debate? Nope. So the recommendations for this paper are that we consider the draft budget for 2021-22 and the indicative projections for the period, approve an initial £10,000 budget funded from the town SIL towards the Highcliffe Community Forum for Action to commence stage 1 of creating a living street environment, and to commit a further £26,412 from SIL subject to a successful feasibility and identifying funding to complete the project. That we consider the council tax precept for the town area, which it wishes to recommend to Cabinet, noting the requirement for the council to keep within the overall referendum constraints, and that we make recommendations to Cabinet on the budget to be set for the Winchester town area for 2021-2022. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Sorry, in terms of the precept, can we just note agreement of a 3% increase in the precept? Because the recommendation asks for what level the town wishes to set for next year.
Yep. Is that agreed? That we set the precept at 3%?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Chair, does that need a formal proposer? Because I'm happy to propose that it be set at 3%.
For formalities purposes, yes. Councillor Looney, if you're happy to propose that, do we have a seconder? I'm happy to second it.
And
is that agreed?
Agreed.
Sorry,
That's agreed.
Can I abstain?
Agreed.
Agreed. Sorry, Councillor Mather, I can hear you trying to speak.
Yeah, I'm abstaining.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can we note that down? So Councillor Mather has abstained from that vote.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So that leaves us with the informal group updates. There is one change, well, two changes to the groups. So Councillor Hutchison is going to come off the KGV informal group, but she is going to join the River Park informal group. So if that can be noted.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. That might be confusing. It's a North Walls.
Sorry, the North Walls.
Group, not the River Park.
Thank you. No, thank you, Councillor Hiscock. Very good confirmation there. Do the chairs of any of the informal groups have an update that they wish to share tonight? Nope. That's Councillor Hutchison.
Just to say that work is proceeding as planned with St Maurice is covered, and I hope that we will be doing the next bit of work, which is to put in the gravestones within the next few weeks, and also the lighting. And there is a meeting of the Town Forum High Street Group this coming week on the 2nd of February, and one of the things we're going to be looking at there, which I hope will be of interest following the walkabout we did back in October, is looking at lighting in the High Street. And I just mentioned that because I think quite a number of people might be interested in that.
Thank you very much. The last item on the agenda is to note the work programme for 2020-2021, which is on the very last page of the second to last page, page 101 of the agenda pack. This is just for noting. So you will see the items that we have heard about today: the town account budget, the vision for Winchester, and the update on the pavilions have all been discussed this evening. And then we have 4 further items proposed for our March meeting relating to fees and charges for open space and sports pitches, Magdalen Hill Cemetery Memorial Garden, an update on the North Walls Park project plan, and a presentation from the Hampshire Cultural Trust on their work in the Winchester town area. They've very kindly agreed to come and speak to us all. So is that noted?
Councillor Hiscock, Chair.
Councillor Hiscock, sorry, I can't.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to suggest that we probably want a feedback session, at least, even if it's just verbal, on the pavilions, both pavilions, and on the greater project that's going to be happening at the KGV as well.
At the March meeting?
Well, not necessarily the March meeting, but well,
that will be the last. That will be the last meeting.
Okay, I'm just looking at forward what we're going to be looking at in future. That's all.
No, that's very helpful. Thank you. So the March meeting will be the last meeting for this municipal year, assuming elections still happen in May. Of course, that's not certain at this stage, but we will take a note of that. Thank you. So is that work plan noted?
Noted.
Yeah, noted.
Lovely. Well, that concludes the formal agenda for tonight. The next meeting will be on the 17th of March 2021. So thank you, everyone. Have a lovely evening. And thank you, officers, for again giving up your evenings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.